problem F, we have a lot going on because we have multiple fractions on both sides of our equation. We have a y minus 8 over 5 plus 2 equals a 2/5 minus y over 3. Now, because we've got fractions everywhere on both sides with different denominators of 5 and 3, what we'd like to actually do is get rid of all of our fractions if we can. Remember that fractions happen because we're dividing by something. So how we're going to get rid of the fractions is by multiplying. What are we going to multiply by? We're going to multiply by the common denominator. Well, what would be a good common denominator between all of these? We've got 5s and 3s, so we're going to multiply by 15. So we're going to need to go through everything from left to right, multiplying by 15. So we'll start out with our first big fraction and multiply that by 15. Then we'll multiply our little 2 here by 15. And don't forget your other side of your equation. The 2/5 will get multiplied by a 15 as well. And the y over 3 will get multiplied by a 15 as well. So all of the pieces are getting multiplied by a 15. Now, let's see how it gets rid of all the fractions. On this first group, what happens is we end up with a 15 divided by 5. Well, that actually can reduce and divide out evenly. That's why we chose 15. Well, 5 goes into 15 3 times. So, we can reduce that and just leave a 3 in front of what we had there, which was the y minus 8. Again, keep in mind the y minus 8 was being held together as a fraction. We still need to hold it together, so we're going to pick up some parentheses here. Let's look at our next piece. On our next piece, we just had the number 2 times the 15, which is going to give us 30. Let's see. Let's go to the right-hand side here of the equation. There's a couple ways you can do the right-hand side. On this first fraction, you can do the 2 times 15, which is 30. Then divide by the 5, which is 6. Or you can do that the 5 goes into 15 3 times, and then times the 2 that was there is also 6. Either way, you get 6. On this next one, with the y's, we end up with a 15 divided by 3, which is a 5. Remember, we had the negative sign out in front. And don't forget your y. So what has magically happened is all of our denominators have disappeared. Now we just have a regular equation. Well, let's zoom out and see what we're looking at. What should pop out at you as something you need to do first? And that should be those parentheses, which means I need to multiply out that 3. I need to distribute. Well, if I distribute out that 3, that will get me a 3y minus 24. And let's just leave it there for now. Now what would we do next? Well, next we'd say, well, I've got a negative 24 and a positive 30 on the same side of the equation. Those are like terms. They can go ahead and get added and subtracted together. Well, a negative 24 and a positive 30 will give me a positive 6. Now let's leave everything else alone for now. Now let's get the y's on the same side. We have a 3y on the left and a negative 5y on the right. The easiest to move is the negative because it's the smallest. How do you move a negative 5y? Well, then I just add or use a positive 5y to both sides. That'll get rid of my negative with a positive or plus 5y. Now, on the right-hand side, what does that give me? A 3y plus a 5y now gives me an 8y. I also still have my plus 6 on this side, and I had a positive 6 on my right-hand side. Continuing along, well, how do I get the y by itself? I'd have to get rid of the plus 6 next to it by subtracting 6 from both sides, which gets me an 8y equals, well, 6 minus 6 does get me 0. My final step would be to divide both sides by 8. And then what that gets me is that y equals, well, on the right-hand side, I had 0 divided by 8. Well, 0 divided by 8 is just the number 0. So what that means is my answer is the number 0. It doesn't mean that there are no answers. It means that my answer is the number